All right, today we are going to unpack a pretty wild theory. It connects the kind of strange rituals of NASA all the way to the godlike ambitions of Silicon Valley. And according to the source we're looking at, it reveals a hidden war for the future of reality itself. Sounds crazy, right? Let's break it down.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with NASA's surprisingly, weird, esoteric origins. Then we'll follow that ideological thread right into the heart of today's tech giants. And from there, we'll see how it all comes together in what the source describes as nothing less than a war for your soul.
Okay, so let's jump right in. And we're starting with something you probably wouldn't expect from a place like NASA, this beacon of science and reason. Turns out it is absolutely steeped in ritual.
Now, at first glance, these just seem like charming little traditions, right? I mean, eating lucky peanuts, making sure the commander loses a hand of poker before launch, it all seems like a pretty understandable way to handle the unbelievable stress and fear that comes with strapping yourself to a rocket. They're just little human things for a massively high-stakes job. But what if it's more than just that? The source material we're digging into today makes a pretty bold claim that these aren't just quirky superstitions. It wants us to look deeper, to consider a much more, let's say, esoteric foundation for the entire aerospace industry. And this is where the argument really starts to take shape, resting on these three pillars. First, you've got the absolutely bizarre story of Jack Parsons. This guy was a key founder of NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab and also a high-ranking occultist who saw rocketry as a form of magic. Yeah. Then there's the naming of the missions. It's not random. There's a clear progression through pagan gods: Mercury, Gemini, Apollo. And finally, there's this idea that science fiction wasn't just for fun. It was treated as a kind of prophetic blueprint, something to be manifested into our reality. So this line of thinking, this ambition, it didn't just fizzle out after the space race. According to our source, it found a brand new and arguably much more powerful home: Silicon Valley. Okay, to really get what drives today's tech leaders, the source says we have to understand this core philosophy called cosmism. And this isn't just about exploring space for science's sake. No. It's the belief that humanity's destiny, our duty even, is to evolve beyond our biological limits and to essentially become gods, spreading consciousness through the universe. And you can kind of trace the breadcrumbs of this idea through history. The source argues it all kicks off with Darwin's biological evolution, then thinkers like Desjardins give it a spiritual twist, Carl Sagan takes it mainstream, and finally it lands right in the laps of today's tech leaders. And here's the key difference. They aren't just talking about evolution anymore, they're actively trying to build it with technology. So here's the bottom line, the core argument. The tools have changed, right? We've gone from what they called magic to what we call computation. But the goal, that hasn't changed one bit. It's still about breaking the chains of death and gravity, about becoming something more than human. Think about it like this. If you're going to become a god, if you want to rewrite the rules, you first need to know what the operating system of reality is. You need a blueprint you can actually hack. And according to the source, that blueprint isn't new. It's been around for a long, long time. This idea goes way back to ancient mysticism, specifically a concept from Kabbalah. It basically says that this physical world we see and touch every day, well, it isn't the real one. It's more like an illusion, a world of lies, and that true reality exists on a whole other level, a higher, non-physical plane. Now, flash forward to today, and what do we hear coming out of Silicon Valley? An almost identical idea, just with a techie spin. It's the simulation theory, the idea that there's a 1 in a billion chance we're actually living in base reality. Sound familiar? So let's connect the dots, because this creates a really powerful logic. Step 1, the ancient idea. Reality is just encoded information. Step 2, the modern tech version. Our world is probably a simulation. And what's the logical conclusion? Well, if reality is just code, then it can be hacked. It can be rewritten. And that completely changes the game. The goal is no longer just to understand reality, but to engineer it. Okay, so I know this all sounds pretty abstract, pretty out there. But the next part of the argument tries to bring it right down to earth, into something we all see every single day: modern politics. And here, the source makes a really provocative claim. It argues that the political divide we see, the constant fighting, is actually an illusion. That what we call the right and the left are both, in their own way, manufactured counter-realities. They look different for sure, one causing disruption abroad, the other at home. But the argument is that they're just two wings of the same bird, both designed to destroy the old order and push us toward the same end goal. So if you look at it through this lens, our whole political crisis isn't a real conflict of ideas. It's a show. It's a spectacle designed to do one thing: pull us away from what's real and get us lost in a manufactured drama. So, if you follow this whole chain of logic, from NASA's rituals to Silicon Valley's ambition to political theater, where is it all heading? What's the ultimate goal? This is where all the threads come together into the source's grand thesis. The argument is this: the real war isn't being fought for land. It's not for resources or oil. It's not a war you'll see on the news. Instead, it's a war for something much more fundamental. It's a war over the power to define what is real. Because if you can control that definition, well, you control everything. And in this war for reality, the ultimate prize is the human soul. So what's under attack? Well, according to this theory, it's the very ideas that ground our humanity. First, the idea of a single objective truth, the logos. Second, our own human agency, our ability to choose. And third, the idea that we have an inherent spiritual value, that we're more than just matter. And that brings us to the final chapter. But it's not a prediction of the future. Instead, the source presents it as a choice that's right in front of us. The way the source frames it, what's being offered by the little gods of tech is a classic deal with the devil, a Faustian bargain. They're offering us temporary, godlike power, but only inside their artificial counter-reality. And the price for that power? The only thing that's actually real: your soul, your essence. So, in the end, the source leaves us with a huge question. The claim is that we're building our own prison by turning our backs on a higher truth. But it also argues that this future isn't set in stone. The story isn't over. And the outcome all comes down to a choice. The question is, what will you choose?